Have you ever set out to do something great, only for it to completely fall apart? Well, that's my journey into game development. A journey that started with big dreams and ended with a crash landing of hard lessons. Programming had always been my passion, but I felt like I was destined for something greater. Then, one day, I stumbled upon a video by Danny. It was like a light bulb went off. It felt like stepping into Theseus' shoes, ready to conquer the labyrinth. But here's the thing, the labyrinth, instead of stone, it was line after line of code. But no worries, right? I found Raki's tutorial series the gold standard of YouTube. Each video made me feel like I could do anything, like I was the next game dev prodigy. I was unstoppable, I was on fire. As I finished the series, I thought, alright, it's time to create. But when I started my first project, I felt like my wings had fallen and the once bright light bulb barely lit an arm's length. Suddenly, I couldn't even see where I should start heading. It's easy to follow a tutorial, but when you sit in front of the My Project screen without a voice telling you what to do, you actually realize how little you know about what it means to be a developer. You've purely become dependent on tutorials. Thanks Danny for the inspiration. Now what? Escaping the loop was pretty simple. Instead of following the tutorial step by step, I decided to jump in and apply what I learned directly to the game. Instead of testing things out in a blank world, I started using my actual character models. Pathfinding? Forget testing with beans, I used my own characters. Watching my game come together in real time made all the difference. It felt like I was actually making progress instead of just following instructions. Speaking of character models, I figured it was time to try my hand at creating my own in Blender. I heard from a lot of people that it was easy, so I thought, how hard could it be? After struggling to make a model and failing miserably, I threw in the towel and searched for a better way. And that's when I discovered the legendary Donut Guru's Beginner series.
This is Blender, open source 3D software that can be used to make animations, visual effects, game assets, or practically anything 3D. And best of all, it's 100% free and it always will be. If you've never used it before but you want to learn it, well, then you're in the right place.
But let's be real, Blender isn't exactly beginner friendly. I even tried to rope in a friend for help, but they couldn't keep up and eventually gave up on the project. You know who you are. Still, learning Blender turned out to be a game changer. It gave me the ability to create something more realistic. I could actually see the models, tweak them, and watch my ideas take shape in a way that felt personal, rather than just following a tutorial and hoping it worked. Well, kind of. Take a look at how my models change throughout the process. It's proof that progress doesn't always happen smoothly. It's like climbing a mountain. Sometimes you trip, but you keep going. Looking back, I'm glad I pushed through. It made the game feel much more professional and really brought my vision to life. I started diving into game mechanics. Things like the inventory system, which worked perfectly, of course. Even the combat system came a long way and improved quite a bit after some tweaking. I also added enemies and gave them some basic AI. Well, let's just say they weren't exactly the smartest, but they did their job. Of course I had to borrow a little bit of Bracky's code to get the enemy behavior working. But then, my game's big selling point, the magic system, turned out to be, well, about as magical as this rock I found on the street. It wasn't particularly fun, and that's when I learned one of the most important lessons in game development: the power of prototyping. See, prototyping is all about testing out your big ideas on a small scale before you commit to them. You need to have your core ideas planned out and split into sections. It's like building a skeleton of your game, just enough to get an idea of whether your concept is even fun to play around with. It's the stage where you quickly learn if your magic system is as awesome as you imagined, or just a giant disappointment. Spoiler, mine was the latter. This is arguably the most important lesson I learned along my journey. But then I had another bright idea: a farming system, because why not? Who doesn't love planting crops and harvesting them in a game, right? But that was the second sign of trouble. I started to add unnecessary features, like Icarus soaring too close to the sun. My ambition grew bigger than what I was actually capable of. It was as though I had trapped myself, much like Daedalus in his labyrinth, chasing feature after feature without considering how they fit together. And that's when the real problem hit me. The scope of the game seemed to grow uncontrollably, much like a phosphorus, an inevitable expanding force where progress always seemed to be undone. Think of it like deciding to play Dark Souls, but instead of a sword, you're armed with only Google search and a dream. This was a problem I hadn't anticipated. I'd convinced myself it would be easy to finish, but the more I pressed on, the more I had to face the harsh reality that completing this game was no longer within reach. Looking back on this entire journey, I've learned so much more than I ever expected. If you told me that Blender would be one of my biggest discoveries, I probably would have laughed. But seriously, it's been a game changer. It's helped me bring my ideas to life, from designing characters to building entire maps. These skills will definitely come in handy for future projects. And then there's Unity. Once I dove into its workplace and understood how the code functioned, it really clicked. I was able to implement some cool features like villager shops, which felt like a huge win, and the boss fights, let's be real, still a work in progress. One of the best parts of this journey was working on the combat system. Watching it evolve and experimenting with new ideas was honestly a lot of fun. But the real learning came from playtesting. Seeing players interact with the game, hearing their reactions, and getting feedback really opened my eyes to what worked and what didn't. It helped me refine the game and improve it, even though some ideas didn't hit the mark. At the end of the day, this entire experience was about growth. Sure, I made mistakes, but that's how we learn, right? The game didn't turn out exactly as I hoped, but that's okay. Every step, no matter how messy, taught me something valuable. And honestly, I wouldn't trade any of it. I'm excited to take everything I've learned and apply it to future projects. The next challenge is already calling, and I'm ready for it.